Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. It's a Monday. We've started once again, another week. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a little link down below that if you click on it, you can actually join the conversation and be part of the Zoom conversation where we have chats and questions and all kinds of other stuff. If this is the first time you've come here, you're probably in the attendee area, and you're probably wondering, how do these people get into the panelists? As you go through today, you'll see us say things and you'll think that, I know better than that. I want to be part of the panel. Well, you just have to get here early. You have to have a good internet, good video, good audio, and show up early by 6:40 and raise your Zoom hand. We open at 6, so 6 o'clock is when we start. We're not guaranteeing anything. Today we had a lot of discussion about wildlife in Africa and all over the world. And sometimes it's technical and sometimes it's not. We're not promising anything. So 6 to 6:30 is kind of an open conversation where we're having coffee and tea. At 6:30 to 6:40, we distribute the Discord link. So we put out the Discord link. This is a place where about 600 of us are discussing everything that we're discussing here, but just ongoingly. So you can get the Discord link. By the time we get to this announcement, the Discord link has expired. So you have to come back another day. Again, you have to be here by 6:40. Between 6:40 and 6:45, we're going to start the mic checks. Once we start the mic checks, this space is locked. So we're not going to add more people. So you don't need to raise your hand after that point. If you see us doing mic checks, it's over. So we do that. Now, once we get to 7 o'clock, we do these little announcements, and then we'll go into Q&A. You'll notice down below, you'll see a little Q&A button that you can click there. That's where you ask your questions. And so when you want to ask those questions, put them in there. Our request is that you have no more than 5 lines, 1 question per post, and that it's actually a question and not a statement. So those are the things that are important for the questions. If you want to do all of those other things, have it longer, have more than 1 question, have it be a statement, there's a chat function here, and you can put it all there. So you can talk amongst yourselves. But if you want us to ask the question, then make sure to do that. You want to make sure that also that you vote on questions. And so you'll see questions up there. We spend more time in the front of the hour than the back half of the hour going through the questions. Then what happens is when we get to the second hour, we start having a more focused conversation about a specific subject. And sometimes we have people coming in. Sometimes we just have a general conversation. We're going to have more general conversations this week than normal. But we are going to have a few focused guests coming in to talk as well. So today, save your education questions away from the first hour and put them into the second hour. So we're going to have a general conversation. We did this last week and we thought it was pretty successful. So we're going to keep on talking about media and education and answering questions and talking about and generally discussing that from 8 to 9. Tomorrow, we'll do the same thing with audio. So we'll have a general discussion about audio where we're basically going through Q&A, anything you have, any questions that you have about that specific area. When we get to Wednesday, we're going to have Chris Summers, who's here. Chris Summers is going to be talking about slating techniques and set camera protocols. This is really important. Like, you may think that, everyone has their own way of doing it. They don't. I mean, they have their own nuances, but one way to show that you actually know what you're doing and a good way to move up is to make sure that you do all these little bits correctly. So he's going to be talking about that on Wednesday. On Thursday, we're moving Olive and Breidenbach's Memo Live to the second hour. So that'll be from 8 to 9. We've put out, and we'll send out another email today. You can still use Memo Live until the end of the month. And then after that, it will go back to costing money. So if you want to get any last questions or figure out if it's something that you want to do, you can do that there. And then Friday, we've got Rick Markley is going to be talking about Introduction to Digital Humans. So this is really how to build 3D real-time virtual beings. So he's going to be talking about how that all works, how he does it, and how he approaches it. So that's going to be on Friday. It's kind of more of our visual effects / CG focus. And so that's what we've got planned. We've got a long day on Saturday. Nick Justin's going to be talking about Unreal Engine. Steve Bays is going to be talking about Final Cut. Leland is going to be talking about vMix. So we've got a long Saturday coming up at the end of this week. Back to our regularly scheduled program. We were a little off this week because we had we had a short Saturday. We only did Q&A, and then we went back to it. Hopefully everyone didn't go, well, I kind of like that. I think I would take my Saturday back. And so hopefully that isn't the case, and you'll all come back and play with us on this coming Saturday. So that's what we've got planned. And without further ado, Chris, can you start off with the questions?
Absolutely. Good morning, Alex. So you can't not mention your new background. What's going on?
I have a big project coming up this week, and I'll actually be out. Phil is sitting in Tuesday and Thursday, and then and Chris is sitting on Wednesday. I have a big project this week, and it required so much hardware that I stripped out almost all of the hardware in my room to augment what we had in the studio to make it work. And so now I'm down to my camera and a backdrop. So anyway, it's going to be this way for a little while until I'm able to assimilate all of that hardware back into the system, and most likely I'll start joining all of this instead of from my house, from our new office. It's about 20 minutes south of here. So I got to figure it out. It's a little noisy down there. So I'm still figuring out whether I keep a basic background here or whether I go down there. But my key is really good right now. You can see all the little hairs and, all the little bits and pieces. Anyway,
that's an excellent Duvetine background.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So the first question is Philip Shane. Philip says, since the pandemic began, have any of you produced or been a crew member on any in-person events? If so, what new safety procedures were in place, or what kind of procedures are you planning for when the time comes? I can talk to this.
Go ahead. Yeah, Chris, and then Beju, and then Bill.
One of the things that we do at our company is we do a lot of very, very high end, I'm talking 10, 20, $30 million real estate tour videos. And we had to change a lot of procedures. At first, we weren't doing anything. And then as we ramped up shooting that stuff, we no longer provide meals or drinks for the crew. One of the things they'll do is they show up with a wireless mic in a baggie already. They'll lay it on the table and then instruct the talent on how to mic themselves. And there's a lot of stuff where people used to be very happy to help the jib operator load and unload his stuff. And now it's like, sorry, dude, you're doing that on your own. And does
the jib operator know how to build the jib?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, he's an owner operator,
and right. Some of them, I think some of them would probably. There is a lot of owner operators for jibs, so that's probably pretty safe. But there are some where I think that there's some operators that I think are really good operators, but I don't know if they built an actual jib themselves for 10 years.
This guy's definitely a pro. But yeah, it's just a lot of awareness of things that you just have to take into consideration. I thought that, so the microphone then goes back in the baggie and goes back to the shop and gets disinfected back, when we get away from the job site.
Yep, absolutely. Beju?
Yeah, sorry, I was just adjusting my camera actually. But one thing we are doing here is basically having everybody go through full medical checks before they come into the offices, and even then maintaining social distances, because we are a hotspot right now here. So lots of infection.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill?
Because production is such an essential part of California's economy, they actually have a production under COVID rules set of things that you can get from, I don't know whether you'd find it from SAG or the local government entities or whatever, but it's a pretty comprehensive thing about sanitation stations and disinfecting of things and how you behave trying to social distance on a functional set. Useful stuff.
We're working on a tour of sorts that is taking a stage around. And one of the things we're doing is we're building the whole thing so that it's designed around COVID. So the way it's built, how it's disinfected, there's almost no crew. So it's all motorized, all the cameras. And so if it goes through, the crew is in a box, and basically the talent never really interacts with the crew.
Could I revisit one last little thing? It's really important for everybody who's watching this to know that at once upon a time we could kind of live in our own little silo. Now, the wider your experience set is, the better you can handle stuff like this, because I've done 2 live shoots, and knowing enough about sound, lighting, camera, and the rest of that, I can effectively get a job done really with myself and maybe one other person that would have taken a crew of 5 or 6. And that, I think, is just going to be more and more important as we go along.
Absolutely. And Bill, by the way, as a note, your audio is like seconds off again. I don't know what's on.
I'm on a fiber line. It's got to be something between my ISP, between that first hop and the world.
It's an amazing thing.
It's all that foam behind you.
Yeah, it's the foam. I think the foam is absorbing a little bit too much audio.
Yep.
Jason, go ahead. And then Chris.
So let's see, about a month ago, I handled a board of trustees meeting for a university in New Mexico. And it was really tough, but yeah, to echo what Bill said, use a lot of shots. Each of the panelists had to be 6 feet apart. Thank you very much to somebody in South Carolina. We had boundary mics, and that worked really well because it was nearly impossible to try to mic anybody else. And I just used a normal analog mixer. So basically more cameras, less crew, and more care. That's about it.
Chris Summers.
Just looking at like a slightly longer run of production, if it was more than a few days, I'm going through that process now, which is why I haven't been in office hours as much, trying to plan this, how to do it effectively. But what we're realizing a lot on a longer run is it's not just what's happening at production, but what everyone's doing when they're not on the production and going somewhere else, going home on the weekends, etc. And this is a big factor to consider.
Yeah, I mean, beyond whether people, whatever their health things are, the bottom line is a COVID running through a crew will take out your production. So you have to, get the crew thinking about it being just that if they get sick, it could take out the entire system, and so stop thinking about whether you're going to be healthy or not healthy. And I know that people, we should be thinking about everyone and wearing our masks and everything else, but I think it's easy for the crew to realize that there won't be a job, it's very visceral, that there won't be a job if any one person gets sick, it could spread and it could end your whole production. So we've seen that. I know of one production that I will not talk about in detail in LA that had that happen, where one crew member came in sick and then 3 had it, and then the whole production just got shut down. Like it's just like, well, we can't, like now they don't have enough. They lost critical mass, and they can't replace those folks, and so, but it was one person coming in that was sick that caused the problem. Go ahead, Barry.
Just one small thing that we've done is to try and be flexible, because we do industrial a lot, and so basically willing to go in on Saturday and shoot on Saturday. We've never done it before for the most part, but right. Between wearing masks and working odd hours when nobody's there, that's about it.
Yep. Next question.
Greg Yote says, are there any automated tools to measure audio video syncing issues?
Yeah, the Hitomi, what is it? I don't know why I can't keep the name of it. Matchbox. I just keep on thinking Validate. So it's very similar to the old Validate system, but the Matchbox is one of the most, it's basically, you can actually show an iPad if you have a receiver somewhere in the world and you're streaming that back to it, or if you're if you're in the same space and that's going back, you can literally show an iPad up on a stage it'll play some audio and video, and it'll immediately tell you how much you're off exactly. There's a lot of places that things will. We're talking about automated, so I want to make sure that as people talk about it, I'm not talking about anything that you can play and then figure it out later. I'm talking about something that automatically tells you how far you're off, for sync, and that's the most used one. It's very similar to what was called the Validate system that a lot of us used before. It's limited to 720p and 1080i, and so anyway, you were gonna say, Chris?
I was just going to roll the next question into this answer. Mm-hmm. Tom Wadaska says, what's the best place in the chain to monitor sync issues? He's using an audio interface, Wirecast and Restream, and he says even though he starts with 150 milliseconds of delay, by the end of the broadcast, they're asking him to take the delay out. But where's the best place to sync that? Check the sync.
So a couple things on set. And anybody else can jump in with what they do, but on set, what we do is we make sure we have a monitor that has a headphone jack or speakers that is, if we're just monitoring it to see if it's there, that has the SDI input, or the HDMI input. But the point is that it's all in one place. I'm not listening with one device and watching with another device. It's all, and typically we're using like some kind of Sony color accurate monitor, is kind of the thing that we have, and it has a little headphone jack. You plug it into that headphone jack and you look at it, and we're viewing it if we're not measuring it. The thing that we do when we're measuring it for streaming, oftentimes if we're using, whether it's Wirecast or something else, is to record, something that's going to let you test it. And that can be, a clapboard. It can be a one. You don't need a bunch of clapping. That's silly. You can just one clap and go look at it. we let people clap a lot because stagehands think that that's important. So they will feel like we didn't do our job if we didn't let them clap for like 5 minutes. So we let them do this funny thing where they do this all the time, and we don't use that. So anyway, so but otherwise if they think the sync is off, they'll think it's I've been blamed for the sync being off and saying, well, you didn't do the test. I'm like, well, I didn't, that test isn't particularly useful to me. So anyway, so so you can use a clapboard, but what's important there is you can either get the record off of a hyperdeck or your AJA or whatever, but I like to take it out of the encoder. So whether it's Wirecast or my Elemental or whatever, I take the actual file that I recorded because that's really the end product that's going out. And then I open it up in an editor and see where it's off at the beginning. That way I have a pretty good sense of exactly how many frames it's being offset. And then I use that to make the correction. The thing people should know about streaming is that most of these, because your audio and video are coming in separately, that audio is going to slide back and forth by plus or minus about 40 milliseconds, the whole show. So you can't, and then you have other problems where YouTube, the live version of YouTube will be 30 to 40 milliseconds behind the record. So what that means is that if you correct for the audio in the live version, if you're looking at the live stream and you're correcting for it, the audio will be just a little ahead in the record. And so a lot of times we try to split the difference between the two. We don't quite get to right on in the live so that both of them match up, but another piece to consider. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, when I do, especially a multi-hour streaming event, I will make sure that I have headphones at every point of need. Like for instance, right at the YouTube stream, and then of course at the Wirecast level, at the record level, and then of course the camera level. So I know where everything is syncing, and then when I have breaks and things like that, I can make changes. Things like NDI could always unsync audio and video, and then that's an easy resync when you have a break to do that. So the headphone things is just the best idea.
And the thing is make sure it's an integrated system. So like if I'm looking at something, I want to look at it on a laptop. Once you add a monitor the monitor will have its, like Dell monitors, for instance, have their own sync issues. So if you have a Dell monitor connected to a computer, you're going to now sync to the wrong thing. So you need to, I always want to make sure it's a laptop, so it's the same machine and the audio. So I use like a MacBook Pro, and then I'm looking at it again to analyze it in a phone with an integrated to headphones, as Jeffrey said. But you have to be careful of a monitor added to the computer will oftentimes change your sync, and so you just want to kind of keep that in mind. And then also know that like wireless cameras will have. A wireless camera will oftentimes have a little bit more delay. You'll lose a frame or two in that wireless transmission. And there's all these things. So every time you have a different pipeline for each camera or audio, it can change it can change the sync per camera. And you have to kind of think about splitting the difference typically. You're not going to be able to change it for everything, but you have to think about what that looks like. Next question.
Chris Summers recommended a trained SEAL to clap on stage.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
Carl Marxer says, what are some common ways to stream the output of Unreal Engine to Zoom? And would that be the same to stream into Twitch?
Anyone? I think we lost Nick. I think Nick was here early and then disappeared. But I think that the Unreal Engine should be able to. It can see NDI, and I think it can provide this back on NDI. So you should be able to use an NDI output from Unreal to pass that out. You also have. What we're doing as we start to build up some Unreal systems is to, we just have a Blackmagic output card, so it just, you're just going to identify that card and say, that's where you're sending the output of the video. So, so either an SDI card or some kind of interface or NDI, I think are the two places that I would.
And you would always prefer the hardware solution to the NDI?
Yeah. I mean, I think the NDI is interesting. I think that, I've seen too many anomalies to put it into a mission critical event for me. I think it's good for a certain level of event, and I'm not sure it's ready for the kind of events that I work on where a couple glitches will be a lot of meetings. Anyway, next.
Robert Baker says, starting to use NewBlue Titler Express preset with Wirecast. Are there any recommended tutorials on it, especially for YouTube, Facebook chat integration? So I think he's trying to take the chat stuff and magically turn it into a lower third title. Sounds like.
Yep. I don't know how to do that with NewBlue. We built tools to do that, so that they're just web pages that kind of output that stuff, that let us take the questions and post it, and you'll see us experimenting with it. It should be this week. It was supposed to be today, but it'll probably be end of the week or this weekend before we roll out our little Q&A system. But it has that all integrated into what it does. Hold on, let me, oh, sorry. Let's see here. I don't know if you're hearing that.
I did not hear anything extraneous.
I had loopback on it. I have a demo of loopback on it. Does that noise thing after 20 minutes. I don't know why. Anyway, Lee.
I haven't used NewBlue, but I know they have a module called Social, and if it works like the one in vMix, what happens is it just you can pick whatever stream you want. The lower third or the graphics will come in and you can bring it into lower third. But I know they do have a module called Social that'll do that.
There you go, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you need tutorials, then the best thing to do is go to NewBlueFX's website and check them out. And of course, I know that Telestream is also making they're starting blogging more than they are doing video tutorials right now, but they're also working on their video tutorials. And of course, if you have a specific question on how to use NewBlueFX to Wirecast, if you're in the Discord, ping me or just ping me otherwise, and I'll try and answer them.
Next question.
Ken Jones says, hello, Alex. Trying to close a gap here. Facebook live streaming our church service. One iPad's camera direct worked.
I think you mean sorta.
Sorta. Okay. 3 cams through ATEM Mini and OBS. No joy. 67% dropped frames. Where to look first?
I think the first thing I would look at is whether OBS is scaling the input. So whether you're scaling the input to like 720 from 1080. So your input from your ATEM Mini will be a 1080 stream, whereas the iPad may or may not have been. And OBS, if it has to scale it down, if you're scaling to a 720 project and then outputting it, it should work. But if you have an older computer, without knowing the computer, I don't know, but if you have an older computer, losing a lot of frames would be expected. So it just depends on what your GPU and CPU are, as far as whether they can handle some kind of convolution there that may be occurring. Go ahead, Chris.
And then it's just going to get exacerbated as you ask it to scale more and more cameras, right? Or
no, because I'm assuming his only input is from the ATEM Mini. So the 3 cameras go into the ATEM Mini and being switched. So from OBS's perspective, it's just,
gotcha.
It's there. So the other thing is that OBS maybe, while it's compressing, changing between cameras. I mean, it could be a variety of other things there, but I think that's where I'd look is the CPU power that you have. You'd have to let us know what kind of computer you have and whether it's new or old or whether it's an i7 or above. If it's below i7, it's not gonna work well. So that's the, anyway, go next question.
I think Colin is hiding his hand behind his mic.
Yeah, the other bottleneck to look at is your USB bus. If you're plugged into an older machine, make sure that you're on USB 3.
Yep.
Because these devices usually have one or the other or both, and not all 3.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Ernest Floyd says, can you explain Rec 709 versus 601 and when to use each?
Go ahead, Jason.
709 is the current standard for HD according to SMPTE, and 609 is older than that, so don't use it. That's as succinct as I can be.
Yeah, I mean, I believe 609 is a really old format, isn't it? Yeah,
this actually says 601.
601. I mean, that's what I'm saying. 601 is a originally
PCIR 601.
At least 108 points better.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, 601 is the standard definition. Rec 601. So it's a whole different. There's no reason to do that. There's no time to use 601. Is what I would say. 709 is you should consider as minimum requirement. Next question.
I like this one. Ken Jones back again. He says, in Discord, is there an office hours how to behave telling us newbies what's what?
I mean, I think that in general,
Alex will tell you.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just tell you what, I'll call it as I see it. No, I mean, there's general, so I'll just give a couple things really quickly, and then, we should put something in there of just how to look at it. But the main thing is we keep it a clean show and a clean Discord. So, swearing is generally frowned upon, in both the panel here and in on Discord. We tend to also frown upon politics and religion just because it separates us. So people get very opinionated about those things, and they start seeing separations that I think are superficial. I know that I'm going to make a bunch of people upset about that, but it's just, we need to look at how much we are the same, not different. So keeping away from politics and religion is something that I think is important, especially in the current atmosphere. And then we don't, when we talk about keeping it a clean show in Discord, there's no no innuendos, no jokes that are a little off color, like just keep it really clean, like err on the side of super clean. We just remember that there's a lot of people in our group. There's 600 people from around the world. They come from different cultures. They come from different backgrounds, different genders, different orientations, all those things. And we just want to be sensitive to that. And we want to be respectful of that all the time, and then generally, I mean, we get pretty casual in Discord, but we want to, and chummy, and that's great, but we generally want to try to keep it towards the subject matters that are, in those verticals as well, and not wander off too much. There's some general chat ones that go all over the place, but try not to fill those with noise. So those are the things that I think those are the key aspects of it. I think that's pretty much, I don't think we apply too many other rules to the thing. I will let you know that if you will know, because if you step out of line in Discord, I will ask you to remove something, but then I'll just remove it. And it's not, and I'm making the call, and it's no judgment on anyone. It's just like, oh, that isn't not something that we want here. And it's not a First Amendment platform. It's just like, we're trying to move a conversation forward. So you just need to know that some things might get removed if it's a little off. I'll usually let you know. I haven't done it too often, but I do it every once in a while. And
then there's always
just pulling, just tightening the focus. Yeah. Go ahead.
And then there's always the "don't be weird" commandment.
The "don't be weird." Yeah. I'm doing that more for you than for me.
Thanks. Me specifically?
No, not you. No, everyone.
That's gonna wipe out half the panel.
No, you're allowed to be weird. It's just that there's an enormous amount of. I'm just, everyone can decide, what they want to do and how, I'm still pretty weird. I'm just good at containing it. Like I used to have my hair shaved on the side, and I had a big ponytail on the back, and I had, all kinds of garb and everything else. I just I found that life got a lot easier when I didn't do that, so you can decide how out you want to be and what you want to do. It's just that you're creating an uphill, battle. I like to stay focused on what I'm trying to get done, not what my personal, attributes or how I talk about things are. I try to stay focused on, actual execution. So that's all. I've just learned that focusing on that more and less on the individualist of being crazy. You can be very individual. I'm very individual about a lot of things, but just try not to be too weird. And think about it like how people are going to read it. You remember that these are a bunch of professionals in Discord that you may want to work with someday. And so when they make decisions about you based on your posts, what you want to make is the decision. I got a job at Lucasfilm based on answering questions on an AOL forum. Like, just be clear, like how powerful this panel can be, and how powerful the chat can be, and how powerful Discord can be. I got a job working on Star Wars because I was on an online forum answering people's questions, but that took, answering them well, answering, and I barely knew what I was doing. I just worked really hard at it, but I was very appropriate. I had I was helpful. I was part of that. And so the Discord is an opportunity for you to meet a lot of people and to, learn a lot, but also, connect with people, but you can do as much damage in Discord to yourself as you can help yourself, by helping others. If you're ahead of everyone, providing all of that input is not only rewarding, but it also helps you establish you with everybody that's there. And so I think that's, a really great place to be. Just be careful with any online forum, but especially in Discord, where it's all people that you are working with, or potentially could be working with. Just be careful of think about what you're going to type before you hit return. So that's like that, and that you should do that everywhere. I don't do a lot of private chats. I don't do a lot of I sign up for everything and every social media as my name. I do all the and I consider everything that could be public generally in these things, because it's a dangerous place to live, is to think that you can just say whatever you want and then it's not going to come back. And so it's not, my thoughts about Discord are not my only Discord. It's a more general approach. Bill?
This industry will tolerate an extraordinary amount of eccentricity if you are absolutely untouchably superb at what you do.
Right.
But the next time somebody comes along who's about as good as you are and doesn't have those eccentricities, you will find yourself gone. It's just how it works.
Yep, absolutely. Except for, I find that with audio engineers, long hair is useful. Like it's like if I see an audio engineer that shows up with short hair, I'm like, I don't.
Some baffling.
Jeff not included, because he's got he's more efficient. But
he doesn't have hair.
Yeah, exactly. So but most of my audio engineers have long hair. Anyway, so next question.
Alex, I'm hurt, man. I'm sorry, but.
You're a musician. I wouldn't say that you're not I would say you're a musician, not necessarily. I mean, you do a lot of audio engineering for yourself, but when I sit there and look at a corporate one, I don't know how many. It's a joke. I'm sorry. Anyway,
I'm just kidding too.
I took that too far. See, that's being weird. So anyway, okay. Next question.
Christopher Shearer says he's looking for a remote audio mixer control through a PC for both gain and level, using a lav mic and a shotgun. The Behringer X32 rack would be great, but too large for shipping to someone's home, and only need 2 inputs and 2 outputs. Looks like Zoom F6 only allows for levels through an iPad and no gain control.
Oh boy. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
The Focusrite has an application that lets you control it. I'm not sure it works.
I know, but remotely, so it's at someone else's house.
You may be. I mean, you can do it over a VPN. So get a Focusrite Solo and control it over a VPN. If it doesn't work otherwise, you could control it with the app. So,
Paul, your email is in your nickname, but go ahead quickly.
I would say just get a mixer that has a software control, and then use TeamViewer to control it.
Yeah, I don't think I'd put TeamViewer into a production pipe for that. But go ahead, Jeff.
Maybe the Behringer XR12 or the XR series, because they have no physical knobs. Phil's showing the 18.
Yeah, that's the 18. Yep. And so you could get a smaller one there, and then still go back to the VPN that we were talking about, that you could use theoretically with the Focusrite as well. The Focusrite won't have quite as many features as the Behringer, but it's also smaller. But if you have one of those software, and then you have to figure out what's controlling it. It might be something that, I know that some people are using Raspberry Pis to do that. So they have a Raspberry Pi running that interface. That's what gets plugged into the, but the problem right now is that the Focusrite will want to be connected to the computer it's getting audio, so now you're asking the host to, if you're providing the computer, I think it'll be easier. If you're not providing the computer, then it's going to be more difficult. So we've seen a lot of people using Raspberry Pis for kind of burrowing back so they can control stuff on site. I haven't done it yet, but that's I know some friends that are doing that a lot. Chris?
This is an interesting problem, because specifically, Christopher is talking about controlling it, not necessarily getting the audio. I wonder if you could build something with like a wireless modem, or maybe like an old cell phone, a little Raspberry Pi, a little audio interface.
You can. Here's the hard part is that, and I admit that I have asked quite a few manufacturers to build what we're talking about for the last 5 years, because we could see it coming with Hangouts. That what you need is a little box that's pre-built, that doesn't have any dials on it, that is going to, connect to the computer, that I can control remotely. You put a RJ45 in it, or it connects to Wi-Fi, and now I control everything in it, and it passes back, to me. And I think that now the market's really there, and everyone's there are people now, I think, thinking much harder about this. The problem is when you start cobbling all the things together that you're talking about, the chances of it shipping and working every single time become pretty low. without a dedicated FPGA, architecture that is just going to be like, I'm going to do this thing. When you start cobbling all those pieces together, it might work, but it starts to become kind of a Franken development.
Well, at some level, what you're describing is an out-of-band remote network KVM, and out-of-band doesn't really buy you anything when the band that you're using or the cable that you're using is the same connection. Out-of-band is really useful if you've got multiple connections or redundant connections, but really, Paul might be right here. Just go find, maybe TeamViewer is not the way to do it, but there are, KVM solutions that allow you to do that, and that may be the way to go.
I mean, I think that I would probably lean towards the Behringer myself because the small Behringer, because I can control it from one computer and still have its audio going out to another. I think that would be more useful. So for what I'm doing anyway. Anyway, next question.
Stuart Fairweather says, jumping around, from watching the SpaceX and Rocket Labs live streams, what's the most likely method used from getting the feed down from the camera on the side of the rockets?
We had a conversation about this, actually. We had the guys that work on the Blue Origin launches talk about this a couple weeks ago. And I believe it's a microwave, it's a microwave, connection. And at that distance, you have to follow it. You have to track the rocket as it goes up. But that distance is not that far from, it's going to space, but the reality of being only 20 miles up, or whatever is not, we do point to points with 20 miles across the, which is actually harder in a lot of ways to go through that much atmosphere. So microwave, can go a lot longer than that. And so it's just a matter of line of sight of a microwave transmission to get that signal down. And you can see if you want to, if you look at if you want to see some of the technology, it's not the same. The guys that do this, I believe the guys that do a lot of these launches is a company called 3G out of Maryland. And they do also like NASCAR, and I've done projects with them where I got a Sonoma Raceway. We had one where they were going through and they built a mesh for us. And so they do a lot of different things, but microwave, I think, is the way that we're doing that. Go ahead, Chris, and then Bill.
Yeah, it is microwave, and they use on the camera side, they use a KTM, a Kineto tracking mount. It's like a stabilized gimbal that keeps it steady, and it's lined up with the lens. So obviously, line of sight, if you can see it, it's going to line up to the craft itself.
Yep. Bill?
Just a word to the wise. That was the chat where we learned the term sacrificial camera.
Yeah. What we call them a lot is also is crash cams. If someone talks about a crash cam, that is a camera that we are not expecting to get back. And GoPros
don't use crash in the context of space flight. That's
bad. There's that sacrificial camera is a better one. Yeah, absolutely. But they, you put the ones in, and you just need to get the feed until it goes away. And the scale of your project decides what is a crash cam. Like my brother is a Steadicam operator, and he was talking about the fact that they're shooting the whole movie with Aries, but they're using my 6K, my Blackmagic, not my 6K, but the Blackmagic 6K for them is the crash camera. It matches close enough to the Aries when they do a little work on it. And he said and if it gets eaten up, they just buy another one. They said at $2,000, to them, that's a crash cam. So it just depends on the scale of your project as to what becomes a sacrificial camera. Next question.
Craig Yote says, what RF radios does everyone use to communicate on site with crew, like walkie-talkies? What's your preferred brand?
Does anyone have any? A lot of the projects that I work on, the walkie-talkies we only use as we get set up. So there are a lot of different ones, because once we're up, at an event, we usually use FreeSpeak, which is the Clearcom wireless packs that, we build a grid and we have FreeSpeak. So for us, the walkies we use Motorola's. I'm not sure which. We use some Motorola's they're pretty good that we use. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of, Chinese stuff out there, but the Motorola's are the standard. I mean, those things are like bricks.
Yeah. Bill, and then Yashai, and then Mickey.
Always use Motorola's, but increasingly I'm seeing people just use their phones and put them on TalkBack Live, and it's not perfect. There are a lot of downsides, but you got it in your pocket already.
It does, and you can kind of fill it in on a smaller project, but it really makes a difference. And when you work with a team that really knows walkie-talkies, I mean, those guys will lean back and they'll have like 10 channels on their thing, and they'll remember how many clicks they are. You know, those go click, 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 and in their head, they just naturally know what channel that they're talking into, based on jump to channel 2, and then they click over to channel 2. They come back to channel 8. They go to channel 6, and so it is important to. That's why part of why the Motorola's are useful is because everyone uses them, and so everybody knows how they work, and there's a little bit of, and with a lot of things when you're doing production, it's not just does it work, does it work for everyone, and is it a standard system that, and again, in the land of don't be weird, I've had a lot of weird ways of doing comms, and it's been largely beaten out of me, so, you just get what everybody else uses a lot of times, just because then everyone else knows it. And then you're not spending half the day trying to explain how your little GSM works. Anyway, go ahead, Yashai.
Yeah, some Motorola, if you need to go like in a structure of cement and you have to go between floor, certain Motorola have a better signal. So just when you purchase them, make sure, what's the intent use.
And you can get repeaters too. I mean, you can get a lot of when you get into a large location, we have ones where we have a whole rack full of transceivers, and then those go out to antennas that go to different floors and different segments, so that it keeps all the communication, moving. So there's a lot more that can be done than just turning the walkie-talkies on. Mickey?
Yeah, I'm sure it varies from market to market, because markets like to pick similar models just for compatibility's sake. But in my market and with the groups that I work with, the most popular one is the Motorola CP200.
Yep.
It's available in both VHF and UHF models. I think VHF is 5 watts and UHF is 4 watts. Mm-hmm. And they also come with it also comes in a digital version, which is the CP200D.
Yep, absolutely. And then the other thing that we use when we don't have a full free speak system is you can get an LQ box. Clearcom makes an LQ box that will let you build PLs, so you can have everybody have a phone, up to, and then you can have them attached to that, and you can give them channels, lots of channels on their phone. So that gets back into the phone area. And then of course there's Unity comms that people use that you can use on set with phones. So as you start to integrate phones more than just everybody calling into a bridge, something like Unity or an LQ box will let you add a bunch of PLs to let everybody talk together. A little bit more nuanced than everyone just calling into something. Next question.
Our own George Kennedy says, Alex, I had the conversation a few nights ago with a few meeting planners and producers about replicating the ballroom to virtual with mixed feelings. How do we have a substantive discussion with them about the shift? And I think what George is alluding to is getting away from the skeuomorphic virtual event.
Phil?
Yeah, I think it's just it's a frank conversation there, and they're going to decide in the first 10 minutes whether they want to follow you down that path or not. But basically, these people are steeped in sort of selling film, and the industry's moving to digital, and they either want to progress or not. And the metaphor is this whole thing: the ballroom is changing. You're not going to reproduce the ballroom. You're going to have a new kind of an event. It might include a ballroom in some way, shape, or form, but it's going to be different. And if you want to be different, let's keep talking. But if you want to just have that analog one-to-one experience, good luck. It's not going to work for you.
And what we're seeing a lot when we talk to a lot of clients is that the folks that are really really going, how do I take full advantage of digital, are finding that it's more successful than a physical event. Like it's almost all of them that are diving into it. When they don't try to reproduce the physical event and they just do digital, it's got all kinds of advantages. When they try to take this physical thing and squash it into digital, it's usually either mediocre or a poor experience. Go ahead, Phil.
And to what Alex just said, I think one of the most important things that this group can do is to shine a light on those great examples where people are making the transformation, and we all use them as illustrations of how this is the right way to do this. This is the primary thing that I'm looking for in this group, is to really be able to use those examples to convince the people who are on the fence that this is just absolutely the right way to go. And this group's going to help us with that.
And a lot of times our conversations are also trying to move clients away from the idea of a conference, like that we all have to do it over, and it's something that I softly tell them all the time. Like, you're no longer constrained by time and space. We don't have to all show up for 3 days straight. We don't all have to go anywhere and get a hotel. We can spread this thing out. You can take a 2-day or 3-day event and spread it out over 2 weeks or 3 weeks and have an ongoing conversation. It's actually a deeper conversation because people get a little bit, they get to think about it. And they can do a little bit and they get to think about it. And they get to have conversations and they get to build a connection there that they're not going to get when they just pack it all in, where they have to make choices between. We have people who still want to do multi tracks. I want to do 8 tracks that are all going at the same time over 2 days. And that's just what they know. And admittedly, a lot of event companies are desperate to, how do they stay relevant? I mean, that's part of the issue that they have. And that's why they have all these 3D versions of the crazy thing is the 3D versions of booths is pretty high up on the crazy, that I'm going to take. The booth was a skeuomorphic thing of the office. You're not coming to the office, you're coming to the booth, but it's like the office, right? So now we're not in the office, but we're still copying something that was copying something else. It's like telephone at this point. And so, but I see these companies like these little 3D renders that you can walk around. And then the other thing I'm seeing a lot of now, and someone just asked me about it recently, was the idea that proximity, like I can walk to people and talk to them and walk. And this is people that don't understand that, what we want to do is back up and look at what are we trying to execute? What are we trying to achieve? We're trying to connect with other people and we're trying to learn. That's why we go to almost all of these things like that. Those are the two things. So you want to go back to the intention and then design something that does that intention with the tools that you have, not try to don't take something what it was doing, go back to what it was intended to achieve, and then figure out how the tools, fulfill that intention, not how they reproduce what you were doing. Bill?
This has a lot to do with corporate culture, and those of us who have worked in the corporate C-suite space for a long time know that every corporation has its own culture. Some of them are, we want to move forward, we're trying to capture an opportunity, the market is changing and we're reacting to that. Others of them are, this is how we've been doing this for the last 20 years and you have to fit into our mindset. So as you identify the corporate culture of the people you work with, you have to decide, do you want to try to push them to the next level, or do you want to just try to move over and work with people who are already doing that kind of thinking?
Well, and the risk, what we also tell a lot of clients is that if you're in that corporation, when you have a corporate job, you have it's a good deal. You got good healthcare, you got 401ks, you got some stability, in a lot of those things. And so a lot of folks tend to be a little more risk adverse because they don't want to get themselves into a taking a risk and failing could be the end of your career path. It could be the end of a bunch of other things. So it's easy for us to tell people to take risks, but we just have to understand that there's a lot of stuff at stake for them. And so making big changes is not necessarily something that's what they're interested in, right? And it took me a long time to learn that because I take big changes. I make changes all the time, and it took me a long time to realize that in a large corporation, that's not what they're necessarily interested in. You just have to keep that in the back of your head. Increments are good for them, and it's not, there's nothing wrong with that. It just creates stability, and everyone, not zigzagging all the time. So there's a lot of risk in doing something in a normal environment. Right now, the thing to make sure people get is that we have a get out of jail free card. COVID, there is a get out of jail free card to experiment, to try to figure it out. No one has it figured out. You can test. If you were ever going to do something, if you're ever going to test new ideas, figure out new ways of doing things and everything else, people will just be like, you get an A for effort. And now that's actually good enough in the current environment. It will not be good enough in the next 3 to 6 months. 3 to 6 months, people are going to start figuring it out. It's not going to tighten up. And then you won't get to experiment anymore. You'll do it however the new digital gurus, create as a structure. And then you'll follow that, because it's, but right now there's kind of chaos because it surprised everyone so much. Go ahead, Sky.
I'm just curious, to Bill's point, to go anthropological in the sense of a tribal concept. And I'm also curious about throwing in the word survival, because these are the two words I'm pondering.
We have a lot of people that are in survival mode. I mean, that we're working with that are just trying to figure it out. And the key for us is when we get into those conversations is to I know you'd never think this, but I can be pretty assertive, about ideas. And so I'm constantly pushing ideas and now I do it softly, but I'll say something in 8 meetings in a row that I'm just tapping on, of just continuing to bring it up. Like, hey, we could do this. Hey, we do this. I'm not telling them this is the only way to do it. And you also have to get really good at pacing when you're working with your partners. Is don't tell them everything I have a whole, like, I look at a partner and I can see where I would like to take what they're doing for the next 3 years, but we just talk about this month. And then we'll open up the next door when this month is working.
How do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One bite at a time.
Yeah. And so you just want to make sure it's really easy to scare people off by giving them too much that they're not ready for yet. And that I'm not ready for. There's very smart people here that will tell me things that I should do with this organization or that with Discord, and I can see it, but I'm just like, I can't go there yet, And so there's all of those things. You just have to be kind of patient and know that it's not going to happen as fast as we want it to. But we do have to keep on educating everyone around us that we need to move away from trying to reproduce physical events and physical environments. There's so much available to us if we're not tying ourselves down, and we really are tying ourselves down. There's not any limit to what we could do if we kept moving forward. Go ahead, Chris.
What I was going to say is what I like to do is take where we were pre-COVID, reverse engineer what our needs and desires were, and then how we got there. And then from that point, re-engineer with the new constraints. And you end up someplace else. And the biggest thing that I'm seeing in the conversations that I'm having with people is they keep saying, well, that doesn't build community. I'm like, yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. I mean,
what we're doing here, I
feel amazingly close to a whole lot of these people that I feel like I could show up on Ishai's doorstep and say, hey, let's go to dinner, or can I spend the night? And he'd go, yeah, sure, I got a spare bedroom.
It's Ishai's like, no, I don't do that. Anyways, you're like, but yeah, you're right. I think that this level of connection. Now we're gonna have to move to speed round. We got into this a little bit, and people kept on asking questions. So we're gonna move fast. Everyone, as I come to you, answer it really quickly. Go ahead.
Is there an easy way? Jonas says, is there an easy way to overlay an HTML page as an overlay on an SRT or RTMP stream before it goes to YouTube? Through a switcher.
For a switcher. Yeah, switcher is the way to do that. Some version of a switcher, and then you put it over black or over a color, key that color out or key the black out with a Luma key, and that will make it work.
You can do this.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. There you go. He did it. All right, next question.
Moving on. Todd Deckler, I have a Blackmagic Ultra Studio mini recorder connected to a Sony X70 and into my iMac. It works well on 720p, but there doesn't seem to be any signal when I set the X70 to 1080p 30 FPS. Anybody know why?
I think it's I don't know if does the mini recorder see 1080p? I think it does. But number one is try 2997, and also check your, rather than 30, and then check your I'm not sure what app. You'd have to let us know what app you're going in there to see whether it can handle that. It could be the app that's having trouble with 1080 as well.
He doesn't mention.
I can't remember whether we've used it for 10. I think it might be 1080i, but I'm not 100% sure. Next question.
Okay, Wayne Hayton says, as I add different brand model cameras to my ATEM Mini, is the latency going to be the same as I switch to each camera using the same audio device in OBS?
It will be if they're all connected the same way. So if you do wireless, you're going to get different latency. Everything else, I mean, the cameras themselves, well, NDI, but I mean, if the cameras are all wired into the ATEM, their offsets, they're not going through anything else in between. Their offsets should be the same. Okay. Next question.
Stuart Fairweather says, still on SpaceX and rockets, has anyone looked at whether Starlink will be useful for streaming from locations back to studios?
I think it could. I don't think we know. I mean, they're talking about sub 50 millisecond, latency, which would be enough to do a lot of useful things and a pretty fast connection. I think it's going to still take some time before we see it everywhere, but it's really interesting. it's Elon Musk, so it actually might actually work. So I'm just kind of like, well, we'll just keep watching. But he's talking about some really fast bandwidths. I'm kind of curious about shared bandwidth and how much it gets crossed over. Anyway, Stephen, real quick, 15 seconds.
It's a mesh network, so you're going to get a lot of jitter.
Okay,
just the design.
Yep. Next question.
Alex Golner says, has anyone have any insight into the new H.266 VVC codec as announced by Fraunhofer today? Promise the same quality as H.265 at half the data rate.
And it'll be great in 5 years. I mean, like we're still in the process of getting H.265. Yeah, 265 is still, and this is what happens. I mean, we started talking about 265. The format started getting talked about a decade ago. So, this is announced. It won't affect us probably for 5 or 10 years. But it's great that it's, that's what happens. We went from 263 to 264 to 265. It's the same model every single time. They announce it, and then there's 10 years of development, and then you have to persuade people. And if the royalties are too much, it doesn't go anywhere. That's what's the problem with H.265 is that it would have been adopted 5 years ago if they didn't apply all the royalties. Next question.
Gregory Wheeler says, has anyone used Rushworks PTX Universal pan tilts?
We had trouble getting them, and then they're not. I guess what I would say is that I think they're pretty cool. I wouldn't use them for on-air pan and tilts. I just don't think that the quality of their pan and tilt isn't particularly high. If you're moving to a place where you're going to move them over and then cut to it, and then move it over and cut to it, I think they work fine. And I think they have controllers. I think you can even use gaming controllers to run them. But they're and you can put so they work well. Again, I probably wouldn't use them for, and we've used them with the micro studios is what we've used them with. And I'm sure they're much better than when we tested them 4 years ago, but that was the concern that we had, was that the pan and tilt wasn't as quality as we'd like. Next question.
I'm going to skip to Curtis because A. Mitchell's is a little long. Any recommendation on cost-effective image stabilizer for iPhone video?
Go ahead, Jason.
The Ronin that works beautifully. It's the 3rd generation, and I'm completely blanking on it. I'm sorry.
That's interesting. I was totally thinking of software. You went immediately to like a gimbal.
Yeah, I went to a gimbal.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, the gimbal is always going to be better than the software. I mean, because the problem you have when you're tracking software is you have motion blur artifacts that come from the camera actually moving. So I got it. Yeah.
Osmo Mobile 3 is fantastic, and it is very inexpensive, and it works better than you can imagine. So $120.
Yeah, and the only thing you have to get good at with the Osmo, I've got a couple of them, is just remember that you have vertical travel that it's not taking account for. So if you're doing a walk, through it, you just get good at keeping your head and your hips and everything else, and most important, your camera level, because what you'll get is a really steady thing when you're walking, and you'll still see a little bit of this bounce up and down. The larger Ronins or the version of this that runs with their camera, with the I think it's the X5 or whatever, X7s, they actually have a system that will do will correct for vertical as well as all the other pan and tilt. It's really cool. Just letting you know, it's there, but that's just a technique. You just get used to it, but just know that if it's the first time you take it out and you're going to use it on a project, that you just have to really think about that level walking style, which any Steadicam operator will do. Like any Steadicam operator knows how to do that. That's what they practice. That's what they work on. My brother does like rounds of he figures stuff out. He walks over boxes and walks over other things, and you get used to visually making sure that you're not doing that walking cycle. But the DJIs are amazing. If you use their software, it has face trackers, so you can set it down and you can walk around, and it'll just kind of like and just follow you around. So it's got a lot of auto tracking, and we've used it for a lot of opens. Like we'll go to a location that we're going to do an event, and we want to do an open for Facebook or something that's just a bunch of we'll literally throw something together in GarageBand or Logic with a little music bed, and we'll just go grab shots of that city and then just put it in. And it's just like the 20 seconds before we go live. And all I used for that is the Osmo and my phone. It's just too much to grab all the other stuff. And that's like when we're done setting up the day before, I just go out and wander around in a car. I stick it out of the car. I've taken stuff out in Cambodia where you just put it, out of the sunroof, and you just get these incredible shots of driving by. The only thing to know about that is that wind resistance becomes a thing with your phone. Just in case you're wondering, it'll do this weird little thing where the motor can't keep up. Anyway, Bill.
Just really quick, don't forget that you also probably have post stabilization in your NLE or something else. So if you start with a rig like that and then stabilize it, you can get really, really good results.
Yeah, no, you add the two of them together and you get a much better result. But the main thing is that if you only depend on software stabilization, the challenge that you have there is that that you have motion blur artifacts. So it's blurring based on the bouncing and all this jitter. And when you stabilize it, you just get this weird thing where the blur is still there, but the movement isn't. And so just know that that's an artifact that comes with stabilizing shaky footage. That you just want to. That's why having as Jason mentioned, having a stabilizer on it first is going to get you a lot further than just pure stabilization. Yashai, really quickly, we're running a little heavy.
Yeah, the vertical is your knee, so make sure on the vertical use your knee. And the other thing is, if you're using software, try to shoot like 4K, so you give a little cushion on the side for the stabilization to chew into the image.
These days, I almost always acquire everything in at least 4K. Just because even if I'm going to deliver at 1080. I want to be able to oversample it, pan and scan. All those things are things that are important. All right, so we are done with the first hour, the Q&A hour, and we're going to now move on to education. We have a general Q&A. So if you've been waiting to put questions in about media and education, and there's probably one question there right now, but there's a lot more of you here. So this is a good time to jump in, ask your questions. And we'll see if we can come up with some answers. One of the reasons that we're doing this, of course, is this is an incredible opportunity for us to change the way education works. For us to figure out how, and for the better. There's a lot of opportunity here to break away from being geographically constrained by, to teach, and to scale and to do a lot of other interesting things. And I think that our education system hasn't changed dramatically for it. The soft version of that would say the last 150 years or 130 years or whatever. The hard version of that would be last 2,000 years. We really haven't done that much new. And so